Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Just a quick one. Just been discussing on my social media group this cartoon here. This is regarding the just concluded SADC summit in Zimbabwe. And what it is basically saying is this is the tale of two parties. Zimbabwe is cursed. I think there's a lot of truth in that. Chamisa's followers readily believe that SADC is coming to conduct fresh elections in Zimbabwe. And Mnangagwa, his followers believe that he was elected chairperson of SADC. Both supporters, of course, are wrong. Ignorance. I think ignorance is actually Zimbabwe's worst case. In the case of Mnangagwa's supporters, if the truth be told, they can be divided into two groups. The one group of those who are benefiting, the ruling elite and their cronies. They don't care about the tragedy happening all around them. And so they support the system because they're benefiting from it. And the ordinary Zimbabwean, the povo, particularly those in the rural areas, they have no choice. Ever since Zimbabwe's independence, Zanu PF has maintained that the rural areas are its stronghold. For no other reason other than that the regime has kept the rural poor, the people in the rural areas poor, denied of any meaningful opportunity to improve their lot for political reasons. Before independence in the 1970s, the late economist and banker, John Robertson, reportedly gave Ian Smith a report that showed that if the government, the white regime, gave the rural people title deeds to even an acre or two of the land on which their home was built, the economic benefits that will flow from that would be unbelievable. They will look after the land better. They will build themselves better housing. Because when you've got title deeds, the land becomes an asset. You can go to the bank and borrow money to develop it. If you build a house with that money, that is only adding value to that piece of land. Some of it, they did not need to borrow money. They could grow fruit trees, dig a well, and improve their standard of living. Ian Smith rejected the proposal because he saw it as the thin thin end of the wedge, economically empower these people, the next thing they would want is political power. They would want the vote. So the white regime said no. Apparently, John Robertson gave the same proposal to Robert Mugabe soon after independence. And he too rejected it for the same reasons. He did not want the rural people to have any economic empowerment because he feared he would lose control, political control over them. Here is Margaret Longo speaking to that very subject.
They have wrong priorities, especially the current government. How can you go and build an airport which services a few people, and the majority are the elite and the so-called investors? Look at the rural. I made you come to interview me because I wanted you to have the experience of the roads that we are using. If we go today to our hospital there, you feel pity with that's a hospital in a rural area. If we go to our clinic, you feel pity. We have no piped water here. Do you know the reason why the rural people vote for Zanu PF? One, they're intimidated. Two, the policy is that the rural people should remain poor and subservient to the government. They should remain poor because if they remain poor, they continue singing the song for their master. This is why these people have been impoverished. It's for a reason. Because at the moment, if you economically empower these people, they'll go out of hand. Zanu PF will never have control over them.
That is very true. And it is tragic. The 50% of Zimbabwe's population living in abject poverty today, the majority of them are in the rural areas. So the whole nation is being held to ransom by the regime for its own selfish political gains. Let's move on to MDC, Triple C. Why is ignorance such a problem among their supporters? What is really tragic about their supporters is that most of them are based in the urban centers, and many of them, they're in the diaspora. This is a day and age when one would expect people to be better informed. It is shocking just how ignorant these people are. Some of them have university qualifications, and some of them are professionals in their own right. And yet the level of ignorance among them is unbelievable. Here is Morgan Tsvangirai talking to the youths at one point.
The only thing I'm not going to my youth, you have to define your future. Apana as a generation, you shall define the future other than yourself. And you don't have Safana, don't know, Sagamjezi. And you watch, you watch eating. I don't know what I'm Mutambi with Guina. Whoa. I think I'm rolling for my Ojaba tooth. What were you? Siwane marwere ngoma, handiti lomo. Chinja.
What you are talking about there is Chinja. It's shocking how few Zimbabweans have understood what he was talking about. Change. Change what? We have had, people have sacrificed livelihoods, limbs, and over 500 were murdered by Zanu PF during the 2008 elections alone to elect MDC leaders into positions of power for the primary purpose that they'll bring about change. Chinja, that's the slogan Tsvangirai was repeating there. And yet, it's shocking how few of those MDC supporters, even today, understand what that change was. What change did you want? Because while he is blaming the youth there that they should contribute towards defining their future, he wasn't telling them the truth. Morgan Tsvangirai and his friends had the golden opportunity during the 2008 to 2013 GNU to implement the democratic reforms to bring about the changes that he was talking about. They failed to implement even one reform, not even one token reform in 5 years. Why? Well, Robert Mugabe bribed them with the E-Class Mercedes Benz ministerial limos, the very generous salaries and allowances. And for Tsvangirai himself, the US $4 million Highlands mansion. And the MDC guys kicked reforms into the devil-thorn Cactus thicket and forgot about them. If the followers had been paying attention, they would have known what those democratic changes were, and that the GNU of 2008 to 2013 was the golden opportunity to implement those reforms. They did not. And even to this day, they still have no clue that MDC, Triple C guys have sold out. I think what I find really disappointing is that in human history, if you look at the invention of the printing press, that was considered to be a historic moment in human evolution. Information became readily available to many, many more people. The age of enlightenment. Yes, the printing press or the benefits of it took a while to get to Africa, but it finally did. But alas, it has not had the same effect. Because in today, the 21st century, if there's anything at all, that it is information. There is a glut of information. You can have information from reading newspapers and books, from listening to the television and radio, and even those in the rural areas, many of them carry mobile phones. Why ignorance should remain a case in Zimbabwe beggars belief, and yet it is. Both Zanu PF and MDC have taken advantage of the ignorance. Well, in the case of Zanu PF, I think it would be fair to say the rural people, they may be ignorant, but nonetheless, there is a level of intimidation to the point where one cannot say they are doing anything out of their free will. But for the MDC supporters, it is unbelievable that anyone could be that ignorant. 2 million Zimbabweans participated in last year's election because they believed Chamisa sly that he had plugged all the vote-rigging loopholes. Triple C was going to win big. There was overwhelming evidence that that was just a lie. There was no verified voters roll. Zanu PF was frog marching rural voters, etc., etc. All clear evidence that the elections were not going to be free, fair, and credible. And yet those people believed it. People reminded these people that this is not the first time we are seeing Zanu PF rigging the elections. This is a regular thing. We've seen this happen again and again. Some of us have quoted. Here is a quotation from David Coulthard, admitting as far back as soon after the 2013 elections that the election process is so flawed, so illegal, that the only logical step to do is to withdraw. He also goes on to admit that participating will only give the process credibility, and therefore then Zanu PF legitimacy. Why did he and his friends continue participating? Well, he admits it there. They could not trust each other to boycott the elections. So they ended up, both of them participating out of greed. So it really beggars belief. Why is it that Zimbabweans have failed to understand that? Why have they continued participating in a flawed election to give Zanu PF legitimacy? And yet they did. 2 million of them. There is a serious danger that Chamisa is going to marshal his followers again and participate in 2028 elections. And if they participate in the same millions, SADC will be tempted, as much as they can accept the report as being flawed, they will also decide to do nothing about it. Because if Zimbabweans themselves do not understand that participating in a flawed election, you are giving the process legitimacy, and therefore then Zanu PF legitimacy, that the opposition are participating out of greed, even now, when this has been explained to them over and over and over again, there is really nothing SADC can do. And so, to stop the MDC-CCC supporters participating in 2028 elections in their millions, as happened last year, is the number one challenge we are facing here. And they all participate out of ignorance. Shocking. This has been called the information century. Ever since the invention of the printing press, information in generation and circulation has increased in leaps and bounds. We have joined in consuming it, but never seem to have sunk in. We are still some of the most ignorant voters on earth. I have to say, that is truly tragic. And yet it is true. I don't know. You can't reason with somebody who is switched off, who can read but comprehend nothing. You seem to see but perceive nothing. You hear but do not understand. In some cases, it's a question of we don't want to understand. Some of the MDC-CCC supporters out there, they have this chamisa chete chete mentality. You can't reason with them. It is interesting, actually, the damage that ignorance can do to a society. In his book, George Orwell, in his book Animal Farm, he describes how Napoleon the pig, the dictator, used the sheep and the dogs to consolidate his own hold on power. I think we can honestly say that our opposition have used the same tactic to consolidate their stay in power. MDC-CCC has never made any effort to educate their followers. Like I said, many of them don't even know what these reforms are, let alone how they're implemented. And this is why, even after blatantly betraying the people by failing to implement any reforms, people like Chamisa, Tsvangirai could turn around and blame the people themselves for their condition. What are you doing to liberate yourself? No. The reason why Morgan Tsvangirai, Nelson Chamisa, and the rest of the opposition don't implement even one token reform during the GNU, and they've been participating in these flawed elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy, has nothing to do with the fact that the people themselves are doing nothing to liberate themselves, but everything to do with the fact that they are corrupt and they've sold out. How to get that message through to some of their Chamisa Chete supporters is the serious challenge that the nation is facing. And unless we can get that message through and stop these people participating in 2028, we will be talking of millions participating in those flawed elections, giving Zanu PF legitimacy. And the situation will continue. We will be talking of 48 years of rigged elections. In this day and age, we still don't know what constitutes free, fair, and credible elections. Yet it is true. We don't. Zimbabwe's worst case, in my view, is ignorance. Food for thought. Thank you very much and have a good day.